Humans are wired to want fairness. There's probably nothing that pisses people off more than an unfair system.
The whole idea of Bitcoin that we're helping promote to the world is like, there is no cheating. Like
Math doesn't lie.
Math does not lie. It's audible. It's public. It's decentralized. Yes. This is why we get so passionate about these things, because it solves so many problems that were not able to be solved throughout history before.
That's exactly right. We're going through an enormous phase transition in terms of what is money. And that's why when some people say, well, Bitcoin can't be money because it's too volatile. No. Bitcoin is money, and it's volatile in fiat terms because we're watching the struggle between the old system trying to survive and the new system replacing it.
Saifedean goes on to compare the invention of Bitcoin to the invention of gunpowder. When it arrived, fighting with swords, spears, axes, and bows and arrows became a losing strategy.
Before the printing press arrived, scribes would copy the Bible. The printing press arrived, bingo, those guys were out of business. They didn't have to copy the Bible anymore. They could print the Bible.
Yeah.
And horses would transport people. Now cars transport people. I mean, in warfare, as a good example, I mean, we once fought with spears and knives and mallets and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And gunpowder comes along, and suddenly all the old things just kind of fall away.
Yeah.
Because the new technology is so superior. And I think if you look at fiat money and you look at Bitcoin and you compare the two in terms of their qualities, it's just so obvious that the Bitcoin is a better technology.
No doubt.
So now, while not everyone's using it today, how is it possible that everyone doesn't eventually gravitate toward using it?
An important part of the analogy, too, is the fact that when gunpowder was invented, it wasn't like, you had this choice. You use the gunpowder or you're going to get obliterated. Welcome back to another episode of Cypherpunked. I'm here with my good friend Larry Lepard. We are going to cover episode 10 of our series on his book, The Big Print. Today we're going to talk about decentralization. And if you're a Bitcoiner, this is a very important aspect of Bitcoin. So welcome to the show, Larry. And
nice to be back with you.
Nice to have you. So what excites me the most is the unstoppable trend toward decentralization that promises to reshape our world for the better. That sounds like a line right out of The Sovereign Individual. I love it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, no, it does. It's like, it kind of, I guess The Sovereign kind of talks about it, but doesn't, say why it's better or worse or whatever. But, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think just as a general rule, smaller government bodies and smaller organizations are better because everybody knows each other. And the larger you get, the more you get the people removed from the people at the top.
Yeah.
The more chance there is for mischief. I mean, I think, a country that's kind of done this well is Switzerland. They have, it is a country, but it's actually a federation of cantons. And each canton is very democratic and they set their own rules. And then there's a broader set of rules set at a national level. But I think when I talk to people there and I understand what they're trying to achieve, they've got politics that people feel like they're actually a part of and they're actually involved with. Whereas I feel like in the United States, the average citizen, their contact with and understanding of the federal government, they just feel like it's this big behemoth in Washington, D.C. that tells them how to live their lives.
That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. And, so at a local municipality level, at their own school board, they might go down and they sit in a decentralized way and they're interacting with the teachers.
With people
and people they know, and they can decide this is what we believe, this is what we value.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more. People are much more willing, and this was a point that Dominic Frisby made in his book, that people are much more engaged and willing to pay for taxes when they can actually see the results of what they're paying for.
I think that's right. Yeah. And when they perhaps know, these aren't just obscure bureaucrats who are cheating in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
These are their neighbors, and their neighbors' kids go to school with them.
Yeah, and there's also less incentive to cheat when you actually know your constituents, right?
Isn't that an interesting point?
Yeah.
I mean, in the bigger cities in the history, people were anonymous, and so it was easier to cheat. I mean, if you look at, I've often thought that in the United States, I grew up in the Midwest, I've often thought that some of the strongest ethics, in my belief, were kind of in the middle of the country. Because if you're a farmer, I mean, there was really kind of no way to cheat.
Yeah.
There wasn't, in a city, you could swindle somebody. You could, give them a raw deal, so to speak.
Yeah.
And walk away and nobody would ever know who you were. But I recall I read some of my ancestors' diaries. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. It's in the 1800s. And, you would see people would come into town and they would be swindlers and they'd get found out very, very quickly.
Yeah.
and kind of run out of town on a rail, literally.
Wow.
and so, again, kind of decentralized where everybody knows. Look, humans are wired to want fairness.
Yeah.
Mammals are wired to want fairness. They've actually seen this in the animal world.
Yeah.
And we know when things aren't fair.
Yeah.
And there's probably nothing that pisses people off more than an unfair system.
They did an experiment with monkeys, I think, where they they had two monkeys, right? And one monkey, they came out and like gave the monkey, I want to say it was like they gave the monkey like broccoli or some kind of like food that was like healthy but like disgusting.
Yeah.
For the monkey. And then the monkey has a friend right next, and they come out and give the monkey like, bananas and fruit and like cake or whatever.
Yeah.
And the monkey that got the bad food just went ballistic, right? It was so angry.
That's exactly my point. Mammals are wired to want fairness.
Yeah. This is a fascinating point. That's so cool. You're reading your ancestors' diaries. I've always been somebody who's been more private, and I've been pushed by my team to do this type of thing. And part of the reason that really struck me was that when you're dead and gone, or when time has passed, like your great grandchildren are going to get to watch this interview one day of like you and me, right? Like my grandchildren one day will be able to watch
I guess
your ancestors.
Certainly they'll be able to read my book.
That too, right? They'll be able to watch the interview. They'll be able to read your book. They'll be able to so those are things like that's why this is kind of important, right? Because books is like what fascinates me about books is that like I can read somebody's perspective from like thousands of years ago. Like I can,
isn't it amazing?
It just takes me back through a book.
Isn't it amazing?
Right?
Yeah. Well, and as you do read history, you realize the universality of the human condition and of human problems and of the cheating. And I mean, as we talked about earlier, the Bible, use honest weights and measures.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought, 2,000 years ago, people were pissed off when they got cheated.
No doubt.
Things haven't changed.
There's a famous quote from the cypherpunk community where cypherpunks write code. It's kind of like there's like the tools that Satoshi gave us, and the whole idea of Bitcoin that we're helping promote to the world is like there is no cheating. Like
math doesn't lie.
Math does not lie.
Yeah,
so there's no incentive. There's no broken. Like it's just this is what it is. Right?
Yes.
And like you can verify. You can verify it. It's audible. It's public. It's decentralized. I mean this is why we get so passionate about these things. Because it solves so many problems that we're not able to be solved throughout history before.
That's exactly right.
Like you said, there's going to be a period of time where it's before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin, right?
I think that's right.
Really, I mean, honestly, in the financial world, that is true, right?
I think that's right.
Have you seen the black hole, like the picture of Bitcoin in a black hole, and it's just like sucking everything up? Like that is reality. Like that is how is this going to play out?
I believe that over some time frame.
Yeah. This made me laugh. So like the frog gets boiled slowly over time,
right.
And you look back and you realize like where did this start? And like now look where we're at now, where like we accept like this massive tax, workload.
Oh yeah, I know where you're going.
Dominic Frisby made the point that, in ancient serfdom, like you would work 3 days for your lord or something, or you'd work 2 days for the lord and 2 days for your who owned the land, the owner, the boss, and then you'd work 5 days for yourself.
Right.
But like now I think there was a guy who did this, like I can't remember his name. He does this thing where he figures out how many days out of the year are you working for the government, right?
Yes,
and he takes like different countries, and it's like in America, like you work from like January to like June, like the average person, that much of your time and energy goes. So it's worse than being a serf, essentially. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
UK is like half the year.
When you add up all the taxes, I mean, the sales tax,
sales,
state,
property,
the local.
Oh my God, there's so many taxes. There's tangible property tax. There's just unbelievable.
I mean, you have to remember that up until 1913, this country didn't even have an income tax.
Yeah.
And it's in the revolution. Reportedly that they threw a fit over.
That's what I was going to read.
Yeah, over a 3% tax.
I was going to read this. Clearly, people were less tolerant of taxation back then. When Britain imposed a 3% tax on tea imported from Britain in 1766 and granted a trade monopoly to the British East India Company, it sparked a series of events that would lead to the American Revolution and the creation of the United States.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. Well, it was other things. I mean, the monopoly was actually as big a part of it as the 3%
of course,
tax.
That's a big factor.
But they were also asking. They were making citizens garrison, British officers in their homes, and there were a lot of abuses that they were putting on the populace, and I mean the populace got pissed off, and I get it.
I know, no doubt. Here we talk a little bit about the Model T, the assembly line. I didn't know this, but I learned this in your book that Ford demonstrated the power of productivity enhancement, reducing prices while paying workers an unheard of $5 per day, which was double the prevailing wage at the time.
Yeah.
His vision changed the entire game, truly a win-win. His belief that workers should be able to afford their own products unlocked a new level of human flourishing.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn cool. I did not know.
It was really cool. I mean, Ford was very visionary.
Yeah. I highlighted this area that where you talked about technology and innovation a little bit. If we valued efficiency and productivity enhancements more highly as a society, more of our best and brightest students would go into engineering and the trade fields versus seeking to get rich shuffling paper in the financial markets.
I think that's
our focus
really true.
on speculation and gambling versus productivity improvements has cost our nation
Big time.
Yeah, that's a big part of the Triffin dilemma and a lot of the stuff that's happening.
I mean, you're in college and you think, I mean, most people, go to college or you're young, you think, well, how am I going to make a lot of money? I want to have those nice things that everybody else has. And so, obviously people look around and they see, hey, people on Wall Street make a lot of money. Financial operators make a lot of money, and they would in a fiat system. And so, some of the best and brightest gravitate in that direction. Whereas and others don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. Silicon Valley, there've been a lot of technology people, a lot of software people who've made a lot of money. There are a lot that don't. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if the rewards aren't so disproportionate, we'll get more people going into things that'll make the world a better place through productivity enhancements. Yeah,
no doubt. We talked a little bit about peak centralized power. World War II was kind of like the crown of centralization.
Yeah.
Peak centralized power. You used this term earlier, the diseconomies of centralized scale, right? When it comes to war and a lot of these things. The destruction of nations, cautionary tales. If you look at history, right, like a lot of wars have really spelled, because it just sucks resources into unproductive things, right? So if you study like even Great Britain, right, the 1800s, they were wars all over. And they that was their pinnacle. And as more and more war, the Roman Empire is another example of this, where
they couldn't hold it together and they fell apart.
Those who ride on the back of the tiger often end up inside. So enormous war expenses forced Britain to abandon the gold standard and resort to money printing, a good example of how wars are expensive and can ruin nations. America's post-war assistance to Britain contributed to the 1929 financial bubble. We did talk about this earlier, but I thought this was just interesting to point out that because I think I asked you about Norman Strong and how he kind of wanted to help Great Britain out at the expense of.
He was an Anglophile, and look, they were kind of the mother country, and it's a very close relationship between the two.
The term mass psychosis.
Yeah, right.
Wow. History doesn't always repeat, but it sure does rhyme.
Right.
We kind of experienced this with COVID. But you wrote here that Germany became the first modern country to experience this. They would not be the last. So the National Socialist Party capitalized on citizenship that had lost everything in the currency collapse of 1929. 1923. Hitler shifted the blame from excess money printing and instead convinced a portion of the population that banks and bankers, many of whom were Jewish, were the root of the economic chaos. By convincing people that it was the Jews who had caused the currency to fail, he devised a plan to return Germany to its prior glory through genocide, conquest, and a war that claimed 60 million lives. Here we see the ultimate danger of centralized systems. When a madman gains control of your country, the consequences can be catastrophic. In my mind, that all of that is completely true. But this idea of the money being the root of all this, right? Reason all of this happened was because we were able to win this war and essentially loot it all and put it all on the Germans' back, right? People don't realize we only have, it's like this video of Carl Sagan, the pale blue dot. We've got this tiny little dot. We're all on this little dot. We're in this together in a lot of ways, right? What happened here? Well,
especially with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, the Treaty of Versailles, exactly, with nuclear, which is the next section. But the Treaty of Versailles, we put it all on Germany, and of course what they do, they just fucking printed money, and that's really what happened there. They just inflated them. They were able to do that, to steal from their population and print money to finance all this stuff. Right. And they had the hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic.
A much more enlightened view would have been to be much kinder to them and to help them rebuild.
Exactly.
Notice how we learned from that.
We learned that in World War II, yeah.
Notice how after World War II, we put the Marshall Plan in.
The Marshall Plan.
And we realized that, okay, this, Germany's been destroyed, but we're not going to sit here and penalize them. Let's figure out a way to help them rebuild if they're willing to play by the new rules. And Western Germany was. Sadly, our ally, Russia and Eastern Germany, they weren't. And that became a problem. And so that became the next kind of, conflict. I mean, I grew up, with duck and cover drills and, the threat of nuclear annihilation because of Russia. But the point is that, yes, that was the time that, at least we learned from World War I and the fact that the reparations were what led to World War II.
Yeah. Dominic Frisby had an interesting take on this, where he says that it's been said that the losers of that war actually won the peace because of that, and the U.S. He's obviously from Great Britain, so he talks about how they basically won the war, but it cost them so greatly. It cost them their empire.
Horrible. Yeah.
Because they were even today still paying back some of those debts, and they just finished paying back. But like these other countries like Germany and Japan, like we kind of wiped their debts, and even though they were the losers, right? So it was almost an overcorrection in some ways.
It's interesting.
But it's an interesting thought, right? But it is important to point out. I think the biggest thing is that the money is really the issue here, underlying everything else. You can have all these excuses. It's the Jews, it's that, it's this, but it's literally the ability for governments to just print money, and for war incentive of when you win the war, you get to make, you get the gold. So you make the rules, right? So all of it kind of goes back to that. So
the money underlies a lot of geopolitical issues.
Yeah. So the nuclear wake-up call you have here, World War II terrified all rational people when we realized that we could actually kill the entire human race. There's really no winners when you're in a all-out war here, right? You got this idea of mutually assured destruction, which is kind of reassuring in some ways, in the sense that since World War II, and since everybody, like, there's nuclear bombs and powers now, it seems like all of the major players kind of understand this, and like the only wars we're getting are these little proxy wars, right? Because everybody knows, if it's Russia and the U.S.,
if we go there, it's all over.
It's all done, right? So
we're all done.
Part of me, I think it took me to this part of your book to find something where I had like, okay, well, Larry, maybe I a little disagree with you here, about this whole idea that, maybe we shouldn't have countries that, or you kind of said like,
I think we should de-arm.
That's what you were saying.
I think we should unilaterally de-arm.
That's what you were saying. Yeah, that's what you were saying. The problem is for me, it's like the gun debate, right? Like all the good people put down their fucking arms, and then,
the bad people have, I get it.
Yeah, that's kind of that was like the first time I'm like, okay, I kind of disagree with you.
It will be a tricky process to get that to occur, and to have the verification and so on and so forth. But but I believe it's something that we are capable of doing. I mean, if we made working on or developing nuclear weapons punishable by death, and if we made all governments and all countries be completely open to inspection of anything within their country at any time by an independent force, and then we all agreed to put down our arms at the exact same time, so that nobody would have them, I think we could take the threat away, and obviously that would probably get tested pretty quickly. That would be a group would get together and say, "Hey, we want to inspect this." And if the inspections didn't occur,
like what they do with Iran, we're like, "Oh no, you're not allowed to come in with the inspectors."
Yeah,
that's what they would always do.
Right. I mean, we'd have to test it. I mean, look,
I think it's. I would love to see it.
I know it's idealistic, and the
that's what
the practicalities of making it happen may be impossible.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's an unrealistic dream or goal to try to go in that direction.
Hey, if everybody agrees, I'm with you. I just don't see that ever happening, knowing how disconnected the world is. And
fair enough. And there will always be psychopaths and rogue people and bad actors. I don't disagree with that. And by the way, that's why we need government. I mean, some people say, "Well, you're being an anarchist." No, I'm really not. I want a government to enforce the laws. My view is the government should be a referee. I want a government that will enforce a fair referee that will put the bad guys in jail, that will follow the law, because it's in all of our best interest. I mean, society doesn't work if we have violence and we have lawbreakers. But I think a government can do that, and I don't think we'd have to pay more than 10% of our income in taxes to do it.
I think 10% has historically been. I think if you look at throughout human history. You study all this stuff, and 10% is kind of like that number. It's like that the tithe was 10 fingers. It was 10%. People kind of, if they can see the results of it, they don't like it, but they're willing to do it. They're like, what, this is fair.
The greater good to make things fair, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think that was kind of some of the conclusion that Dominic Frisby came to in his book on taxation and taxes. This brings us to how technology enables decentralization, right? We've got the internet. Now we've got Bitcoin. Like, these are brilliant breakthroughs that really give powers back to the individual. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think we discussed this a bit earlier, but I just think it's brilliant. The microprocessor and technology have really, in my view, saved mankind. Because we by putting power back in individual hands, by making communication universal and cheap, by allowing us to build a monetary system based on math, not PhDs, we're moving back towards a system that is more inherently fair. And that really has only occurred as a result of technology. I mean, this couldn't have been imagined. I mean, hey, even the internet, I mean, none of these things were around, 30 years ago. But as they came into focus, they've really changed the world, and in my view, very much for the better. And so I think we have nothing to expect but a better and better world as these innovations continue to roll out, and as this old sclerotic organizations that do bad stuff nobody supports them anymore.
Yeah.
And so they die. And people look back at it like, I can't believe you guys let 12 people set the price of money. What were you thinking?
I'm going to get to that at the end of the book. That makes me laugh.
You guys are nuts.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an Austrian economist, I mean, we realize, like, you look at it and you're like, this is so fucking absurd. Like, that this is a thing. It's just, wild. You wrote here, Bitcoin is a lot like the internet, only it is an open source peer-to-peer network for money. Right. Consider this. Before Bitcoin, all financial transactions relied upon a third-party provider, except for cash. If you wanted to conduct any financial transaction, you used a bank, credit card company, or third party. There was no way to transact natively and digitally without interference from an outsider. And then you went a little further here where you talk about the federal government and why decentralization is kind of so powerful. But you say a federal government powerful enough to conduct warfare around the world are beginning to show their wear and tear. And it is becoming clear that the costs of running these organizations outweigh the benefits that they provide. Exactly. I could not agree more.
Yeah, and it's become so obvious to so many people.
Yeah. We talk a little bit about pattern recognition here, which I think is extremely important. Being a successful investor requires strong pattern recognition skills. Mark Twain's aphorism. I didn't associate that to Mark Twain, but we've said it a couple times in this series.
Rhymes, yeah.
History does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So it's cool to learn. That's actually a Mark Twain quote. So you talk about how you missed some things, when the one thing that you missed was kind of this idea, not thinking in network terms. You said, as a result, I missed the full impact of Metcalfe's law. We've talked about Metcalfe's law a little bit. We've mentioned it, but let's unpack Metcalfe's law a little bit because it is super important here.
It really is.
I'll open it up and read kind of what you wrote in the first sentence, which is Metcalfe's law states that a network's value grows proportionally to the square of the number of connected users or devices in the network. Or said another way, network value grows geometrically even as the number of users only grows linearly. This law explains why businesses like Amazon, Facebook, Google have become incredibly valuable and defensible businesses. And you like the returns from some of these are just astronomical, right? Because if you go from 10 users to 100 users, right? Like you've 10x'd your, the number of users, and that's just a linear increase, right? You've gone up linearly, but the number of connections now between 100 people is so exponentially higher than the number of connections between 10 people that the possibilities are essentially endless.
Yeah, that's right.
So when did you realize that you kind of missed this, and when you understood that this is actually?
I'm probably around 07, 08, the returns on all these networking stocks were just so lights out, and I'd missed them. I mean, I was always looking for things that were growing, and they were growing, and I always look at them and I'd say, God, I like this. It's growing, but it's not making, in Amazon's case, it's not making any money, and it's really expensive. How the hell am I going to buy it? And but over time, I corrected my ways. I realized I was wrong, and that these are different. They're just it's just a different animal. It's a different animal.
You got to evaluate it differently.
Yeah, and so I figured it out. And by the way, that helped me when Bitcoin came along to say, okay, this is I screwed it up here. But let's not make that mistake again.
Oh, brilliant. I love to see that. I mean, that's, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Right. But okay, these networking things are really powerful. Oh, my goodness, here's a new network for money. That might be really powerful too, right?
It's crazy that, this money is the biggest social network to ever exist.
Exactly.
So it's super easy to make the jump like, okay, Facebook and these social,
like
money itself is like, there's nothing more important than the network of money.
We all touch it.
Yeah. Everyone
has to use it.
Yeah. So that's so brilliant. You said the upside breaks traditional investing models. So I think that's an important thing for people to understand. Is Metcalfe's
really
law
is.
really good?
Yeah.
If you understand Metcalfe's law, I think you're going to do really well, no matter what happens with deflation, inflation, all the stuff that you're talking about in the book. If you really understand Metcalfe's law, you will it will help you understand why Bitcoin has been the best performing asset in all of human history, and will likely continue
likely
to be
to continue
the best.
to
Of
be.
course, yeah.
That's the thing.
I think it's inevitable, honestly.
What's going to change?
Nothing. It's only going to become more adopted, and the Metcalfe's law is only going to explode to the upside, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So here you talk a little bit about your personal investment journey. This like this is so classic. I've heard this so many times from people. Even like I told you, people that I know that have friends of mine that like I play poker with, like that fucking manage like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Like $500 million, and they just tell me like, this is what I get from them. They say, so here you said, even in the mid 1980s, my colleagues in the venture capital world remained deeply skeptical of software investments. Software is bullshit, they would say. You can't touch it, you can't feel it. It's just code. So
Isn't that amazing?
I'm having the same conversations with people today that manage $500 million
About Bitcoin.
Yeah. Same thing about this is just this is just software. This is just you can't touch it. It's bullshit. It's a scam.
In the mid 80s, if you were a technology investor, you wanted to buy IBM and DEC and the disk drive companies, Miniscribe, and all these disk drive companies that basically were making hardware that was tangible that you could touch. And meanwhile, Microsoft was over here growing 40% a year, trading at 14 times trailing earnings. And everyone's like, it's just bullshit. It's a bunch of code. I mean, how can that have value? Right?
Wild, right?
Isn't that amazing?
It is wild.
I mean, the parallel to today, it's the same thing.
History does in fact repeat sometimes, even though along with rhyming. You wrote here, if Bitcoin proves to be the asset that we think it is, it should be held across generations, not traded for short-term gains.
Right.
There's a cool excerpt here that you wrote. I know we have limited time here, so I'm trying to figure out what we can touch on and what we can't. I'm going to skip ahead here to the stock to flow measure. It is the soundest by a large margin, which we talked about previously. And Saifedean has a great quote here. History shows it is not possible to insulate yourself from the consequences of others holding money that is harder than yours. This is such a great analogy, this idea of gunpowder. I remember reading this in the book and was like, it was like one of those aha moments, right? Saifedean goes on to compare the invention of Bitcoin to the invention of gunpowder. When it arrived, fighting with swords, spears, axes, and bows and arrows became a losing strategy. And this is where you come to where you say that future generations will likely discuss finance in terms of pre-Bitcoin and post-Bitcoin, much like we reference history eras as BC and AD. But can you unpack the gunpowder analogy a little bit?
Yeah, I love that analogy. I mean, when once a technology arrives that's so much superior to what existed prior to its arrival. Yeah. I mean, when the printing press, before the printing press arrived, monks would copy, scribes would, copy the Bible. The printing press arrived, bingo, those guys were out of business. They didn't have to copy the Bible anymore. They could print the Bible.
Yeah.
And I mean, horses would transport people. Now cars transport people. I mean, in warfare, as a good example, I mean, we once fought with spears and knives and mallets and so forth. And so, and gunpowder comes along, and you can take a bullet and you can shoot it hundreds of feet and yards, and put a hole in somebody, and so suddenly, or you can create a bomb that'll blow somebody up, and so suddenly all the old things just kind of fall away. Yeah, because the new technology is so superior in terms of the qualities that it holds. Yeah. And I think if you look at fiat money. And you look at Bitcoin and you compare the two in terms of their qualities, it's just so obvious that the Bitcoin is a better technology.
No doubt.
And so now, while not everyone's using it today, how is it possible that everyone doesn't eventually gravitate toward using it?
Yeah, I think an important part of the analogy too is the fact that when gunpowder was invented, it wasn't like you had this choice. It was like you use the fucking gunpowder or you're going to get obliterated. Like this is not a.
I mean, the American Indians certainly figured that out, right?
Like
I mean, of course they ended up having rifles in the end, but the point is, in the beginning, when they were fighting with spears, I mean, or bow and arrow, guys with guns had a huge advantage.
Yeah, and. You write here that I fully expect that over the course of the next 20 to 40 years, Bitcoin will supplant all other forms of money to become the numeraire for economic transactions. I think this is the one aspect of Bitcoin right now that we talked about previously too, that has the one characteristic money that Bitcoin is losing on is this idea of acceptability, right? Yes. Because it hasn't existed long enough for people to trust it.
Well, the medium of exchange piece is still lagging.
Yeah.
And that's just because the technology is not there yet.
Yep. And also just the education to for
that's-
most people, and the fun coming from the
most
media.
people
and all
have
this,
it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a prescient analogy here. You wrote that Bitcoin is at the American online, the AOL stage of the internet's development. Today feels a bit like 1998 to me. Bitcoin is large, proven, and working, but is still a niche financial product. I feel the same exact way. Like that feels like
I don't know if do you remember AOL where
that's
the dial-up?
yes. Like I was a kid when that happened, and I think like that's exactly where we're at right now. It just feels like we're right in that. That.
I mean, it worked,
time.
but it was pretty clunky.
Yeah. It's hard for people to imagine.
Zoom,
the technologies and the different things that will be built and stacked and ease of use built on top of that.
Exactly.
We're kind of really interacting with that base protocol layer still, and some people are like a little struggling with that. And you can easily interact with it, which is amazing. Most protocols are very difficult. People don't understand them. We talk about HTTPS, which is Internet Protocol, and hyper transfer whatever protocol. There's HTML,
TCP/IP,
TCP/IP. There's all these protocols, and like you use them on a daily basis, but most people couldn't even tell you.
We
what
don't even
they
see
were.
them. Right. Yeah. All we know is that it works.
but Bitcoin is a protocol, and we can already kind of use it. And like most people, if you do a little research and studying, like you can use the Bitcoin protocol on the base layer, but now people are using it on other layers, right? Like Venmo and PayPal and the Lightning Network. There's other stuff that's kind of built into it, built on top of it. I mean, where people will interact easier. Even we see this with hardware wallets. Have you ever used a ledger?
Oh yeah.
Have you used the new ones with the touch screens?
I've not.
Oh yeah, that's once you use one of the new ones, I would highly recommend getting one of the. I think they're called the Flex is one, and I can't remember the other name of the other one, but the touchscreen is like almost like a Nook screen where it's like kind of that ink that disappears. That's
sure.
The grayscale ink. It is an unbelievable experience. So like that to me was like the first jump of like, okay, like this is,
I get it.
We're going mainstream now. Like people are going to be able to, like before it's clunky with the older ones, where you have to like type the little words people can't see. And it's like, but now when I help, elderly people set up their ledgers, I'd say, look, don't buy the old ones, buy the new one. They come in and it's like a touchscreen interface and they're used to it. And it's like,
and that's going to happen. Everything's going to get easier to use.
Exactly. All this stuff is going to be built on top. Right. So store of value and medium of exchange. Money has primarily served two important functions: medium of exchange and store of value. I think Bitcoin right now is really focused on that store of value. I mean, that's really the use case that many people see. I mean, I easily see that. Although it can be used as a medium of exchange, it's just not quite there yet. And let's see here. We only got a couple minutes left here. The Lightning Network, which we just talked about, is a network built on top. You wrote here at the end of this chapter, my years of experience and pattern recognition in the investment world tell me that we are entering an exciting era in the evolution of money. It's hard not to feel a sense of anticipation and wonder. The future looks brighter than ever. We'll spend 1 minute talking about how this unfolds. That's the chapter 21, which is only 1 or 2 pages here. But you talk about how this unfolds. Current conditions strongly suggest that monetary authorities, particularly the Federal Reserve, will continue choosing monetary accommodation over fiscal austerity. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I think as long as Jay Powell is the Fed chairman, he's indicated to us that he intends to be like Paul Volcker and not print unless forced to. I think the mathematics of the situation suggests that he may be forced to, but he may make it to the end of his term, which I think ends in the first quarter, right after the first quarter of next year.
Yeah.
I think the math clearly suggests that within a 12 to 18 month period, they will have to print more money. And I think when that happens and everyone sees it, there will be another huge spurt up in the price of gold and the price of Bitcoin as we move into what I would call the more advanced phase of the sovereign debt crisis.
Yeah.
And so it's coming. We just don't know exactly what time frame. And
quantitative tightening apparently is being
well, they already took that down. They took that down. It was $25 billion a month they were letting run off, and now it's down to $5 billion. So that was a big step. But the long story short is these changes are coming. It is difficult, though. I mean, one has to be patient. I mean, look, the Civil War broke out in 1860, 61-ish time frame. But they were arguing over the whole issue in 1840.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you study the history of that,
you read history books and you realize that certain changes that are big and seem obvious and quick, they take
decades to play out.
Yeah, they take 5 to 10 years to unfold.
And a lot of times when you're in that historical moment, you don't realize really what's even happening.
Right.
History books go back and just point it out and say, this is the war.
It's a paragraph.
It's a paragraph. Yeah.
Right.
This is like 2 decades of time. And like,
exactly. But it's in the process of happening. And every year we see more steps in the direction that you and I are describing.
Yeah.
And so, again, I don't see what's going to reverse that trend. I don't know exactly the slope of the curve as we go through it, though.
Yeah. You've got this quote. I love this. We talked about this before. If you're beginning to get the notion that these people do not know what they are doing, you are not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
the Federal
obvious.
Reserve. The Federal Reserve is screwed. I mean, they really are trapped, and they're running an organization that can't do what they say they're going to do, and they're doomed to the dustbin of history someday.
Yeah.
But whether that day is tomorrow or a few years from now, that's uncertain.
And when civilization and humanity goes through these periods, you talk. This is the last question I guess I have for you for this chapter. You talk about this volatility, and you mentioned that, like for example, in Weimar, in German, the Weimar Mark, and the hyperinflation that occurred there, you mentioned that even though gold proved to be the correct investment choice, the chart reveals multiple monthly periods of steep decline. If one had been heavily leveraged, it would have meant a wipeout. And then you show this chart with these erratic.
It's a zigzag. Yeah.
Can you explain this to me so I understand?
Yeah. Well, this was 1921 to 1923, Germany. They were printing money like crazy. Ultimately, the money became worthless. But there were periods of time in that it's a 3-year period. There were periods of time when they said something like, well, we're going to stop printing. Everything's going to be okay. And everyone believed them. Yeah. And the price of gold went down and the mark strengthened. And of course, then something changed and they had to print more money. And of course, it went in the other direction. And so, these zigzags are very typical of, we're going through an enormous phase transition in terms of what is money. And that's why when some people say, well, Bitcoin can't be money because it's too volatile. No. Bitcoin is money, and it's volatile in fiat terms because we're watching the struggle between the old system trying to survive and the new system replacing it. Yeah. And so as we've all been through, as any Bitcoiner's been through, how many times have we heard Bitcoin is dead? Right? I mean, remember?
That's a running joke at this point, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've heard 15 times that Bitcoin is dead. And with every downturn, I'm sure if we go to 400 and we correct to 200, somebody say it's all over. The bubbles burst, Bitcoin is dead. And of course, then it'll go from 200 to 1 million.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so this is the way, you've got these competing factions, some who believe in it, some who don't. And you've got, fiat dying slowly, but that's getting to be not just gradually, it's going to soon be suddenly. And then eventually, of course, in Weimar, Germany, what eventually happened is it was dead. Yeah. I mean, the mark was dead. And so that, I believe that could happen to the dollar, although we might do a reset before it happens.
I think this is really important because so many people like to leverage up on these bets and crazy stuff. And,
and that was part of the message of the book.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've seen people with Bitcoin lever it up.
Yeah.
And then it moves against them and they lose their coins.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sad.
It is sad. You're right.
It's really sad. I mean, so Bitcoin is such a big asymmetric bet. You don't need to use leverage to get higher returns.
You don't have to do 5x leverage, 100x leverage, BitMEX.
I mean, it's really rather amazing.
Just dollar cost average.
That you can just dollar cost average, buy sats, stack them, forget about them, and you can wake up in 5 or 10 years and you're going to be much richer.
I'll close this out with a final takeaway here. The takeaway from this chart is that if we are entering a period of financial chaos, leverage will not be your friend.
I think that's right. I think that's exactly right.
Let's close out.
Fantastic. Thanks, man.
All right, brother.